Entrepreneurship is not sexy. It really is a tough thing. It's very lonely. And so I think knowing that and kind of expecting that, but also then just being willing to take the risk because the best things in life are typically on the other side of taking risk.
I'm on the street, a robot drives by me, I then go look it up, then I get retargeted at home and wherever I go because I looked it up, or just get retargeted because I walked by it and now it knows that I've been in proximity.
Yeah, that's a great question. That was the headline, right? So that shuts down, shuts down. There was one that said we pivoted, and I was like, I'm like, yes, you got the narrative right, but it was a failure, right? I mean, my investors that had invested in a business model, but I had to basically take initiative, right? Because yeah,
No,
it's
you have to or it dies.
that's it. And the idea was, you've invested in this business, you have to trust my judgment.
Welcome to another episode of Scaling Secrets. Today I'm with Judah from Nickelytics. We're really excited to talk to him. He's done a lot of innovative things in the advertising space, including robots. So let's just jump into advertising on robots. Walk us through what that is.
Yes, been in the advertising space for 7 years and kind of been a mix between advertising and mobility and leveraging technology. So it's kind of been in those three sectors. And yeah, we kind of stumbled into robotics advertising, and the way that's happened is, we've built out a platform that essentially allows advertisers, or sorry, that allows mobility partners who have a fleet, they're looking to monetize and add revenue to their business, can come to us, and we essentially are a turnkey solution for advertising. And I don't know if you've seen them, but out in larger cities, there's these autonomous robots that are actually quite popular. So you might order an Uber or a Lyft, or like a DoorDash, and then it's going to be delivered by a robot. And so obviously very attention futuristic. We reached out to them, ran a pilot. That pilot was very successful. We started to add our technology measurement to it, and then we started working with a lot of other players. And so here we are in the kind of the leaders, I guess, in the space of autonomous robotic delivery advertising, which is it's pretty fun.
A mouthful.
Yeah, I know. I don't think I could say that.
Let's get an acronym for that. But what's the main city? Where do you see those the most? Because I haven't seen those.
Yeah, no, we're actually now with the latest partnership with Starship. We're now with the six partners that we have. We're in about 50 cities.
Wow.
And 65 universities. So
Okay.
we're calling 2024. That's this year, right? 2020.
Yeah, that's what we're going into.
Calling it the year of the robots.
Okay.
So, this is a newer business segment for us, but it's really catching on. We just signed a contract with one of the largest financial institutes. And so, out of home isn't always the most fastest movers in the space, but we're certainly seeing it slowly catch on. So
It's pretty cool.
we're excited about it.
It's very unique. What's your biggest city? If I was going to go to a city, where am I most likely to see it?
Yeah, so LA is
LA.
yeah, you can't, you're going to see them on every street corner. That's kind of the birthplace of it. So we got a strong partnership there with Surf Robotics. We've done campaigns with Ad Council, DirecTV out there, Smokey Bear, which was pretty cool to see, the Smokey Bears protecting us from wildfires on a autonomous robot, bringing it into the future. So, it's in a lot of cities. So it's coming. I'm sure it'll be in Tampa and St. Pete before we know it.
Awesome. And so you're the co-founder. You recently had a liquidation event or an exit.
Yeah.
What do you call it?
Yeah, no, it was. I think all the above.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on the day, but yeah, it was an acquisition.
Okay.
So founded the company in 2017 it was a rideshare company actually paid for by advertising, and we developed this internal tech platform. We scaled that business, the rideshare business, to 5 cities, and found out it's very expensive and complex to move humans around.
I'm sure.
And
Free water. I've seen those all the time. I've never seen the rideshare.
yeah, exactly. Similar concept, but got to a point to where we really saw we had 2 businesses, and we had this ad tech business internally that we built out. That was our dashboard to show advertisers that, hey, these vehicles are actually moving, people are seeing them. And then we started to do some stuff with like retargeting through like third-party data integrations, and got to a point where we saw like, wow, this is like actually where the value of what the advertiser is paying for, plus the business could get profitable as opposed to just having to, hopefully that, you eventually go public and can have billions of dollars. And it was when Uber and Lyft went public too. So also the transportation space was not ideal to be invested in, especially as a first-time founder. So we pivoted in 2019 to Nickelytics, and have been building that business up. I mean, there's certainly been a lot of challenges over the years. We're in out-of-home advertising, and then, you go through COVID. So it's obviously a tough time to, sell ads to people, and they're all locked home. And
outdoor advertising during COVID, not the best model, but
not the best.
It's picking back up, I'm sure.
It has been, And thankfully, we were able to, make it through that. We were staying lean and kind of positioned ourselves. And there was actually a lot of businesses that were growing during that time, and so we kind of just shifted business, just like you have to do, stay resilient. And then, we just, thankfully, we're able to grow like 9 consecutive quarters in a row, and hit profitability. And we're in a unique position, and got started with the conversation about investments, and then that ended up being a pure acquisition. And so they kept me on as a CEO. So now we're still continuing to build a business, but have a lot of support behind the business. So it's super exciting.
Yeah. So I know we talked in the past, and you mentioned kind of the podcast is Scaling Secrets. So how do we grow the business? But a big piece of that is once you grow the business, how do you exit the business? And you were talking me through some tax advantage things you did. I don't remember what it was called, but what was the kind of acquisition called?
Yeah, so I believe it was
I might stump you here.
Yeah, my count.
It was a reverse triangle.
Yeah, something like a reverse triangle acquisition, right?
Okay.
And I think I'm sure I butchered that, but it was essentially where you hire. It's all about having a team, right? You got to know your skill sets, and obviously, I actually had read a book on exiting. Shout out to Raj, who wrote the book. I have to drop it in the subtitles.
We can do that.
Art of the Exit or something like that. But it's all about building a team, right? So you have a team that's playing key roles, and obviously your attorney, was extremely instrumental in that. You don't want to go through that process alone. And
I've heard horror stories, like literally horror stories.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was pretty, grueling times, even with the attorney and the supporting staff that we had. I mean, no acquisition's ever going to just be an extremely smooth process, because they're looking through everything. Obviously, they're doing their due diligence. And, you're still having to run the business at that point. So it can be a pretty taxing time, but thankfully we were able to stay the course. The most important thing was also understanding the decision makers had to buy in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it really was helping the attorneys try to find a middle ground, right? Obviously, two attorneys are fighting two different battles.
They're doing their job.
You're just trying to make it happen. And there's a time restraint on kind of, when it's going to make sense, or, looking at other options. So certainly was not a quick process. Wasn't ideal, but I think, if I were to do it again, and I think the first thing I would do, which is almost counterintuitive, is think about when I'm starting a business, what is the exit, right?
Right.
What is, because there's a lot of different businesses out there. There's a lot of different ways to be successful, but depending on what your exit looks like, you need to be very realistic about your odds of that becoming $1 billion company are slim to none, let alone, even being a success. We know what the success rate in startups are. So, there's a lot of ways to structure deals, kind of in the mid-market, where you can have successful outcomes for your shareholders, yourselves, your employees.
Right.
And then, still be able to, have what you want to do at the forefront. So it's been a world of learning experience.
That's awesome. Let's jump back into the advertising. What's your kind of target audience? Who is the best client to advertise? I'm sure it's all over the place, but I have a lot of success doing it.
Yeah, great question. And that was a challenge at first, right? Is because out of home advertising, you can think of is anybody that, has eyeballs. Yeah, your potential client, right? And
that's really tough, right? Because it's so broad, and we were trying to sell to everyone to work. And it was like, we said to this client, we said to that client, this would be a small deal here, small deal there. Just anything to get money in. But as you start to really build your business up, you realize the importance of like your ideal client profile, right? And so over time, we got really rigorous towards understanding, all right, these are who not only get the best value out of our service, but they're also like going to renew. They're going to be a good business partner for us as well. So we got to fire some clients, but really it was kind of looking internally. And so over time, we really, I would say, kind of narrowed down who we serve best. And right now we're seeing a lot of success with financial institutions, a lot with higher education, a lot with tech companies actually. So there's a lot of recruiting too that we're seeing, a big surge in. And
Food and beverage is always a big one.
Say Red Bull. That's
Yeah,
the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know if you work with them, but that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, Monster, definitely the brands there. So yeah, I mean, it can grow over time, but I think that's an important thing when you're starting to scale is, don't let everyone be your customer because you won't have any customers, right? And so we got really good at that. I created case studies. Attorneys is a big one for us. Obviously, attorneys love to see their faces, and now we're able to provide these analytics that prove the effectiveness of it and show people who visited show the amount of visitors that they got on their website, and how many people actually took action, and so it becomes very valuable.
Very curious in that.
Magic.
Okay. We're not sharing the magic.
No.
Is it a QR code that you can track to, or is it?
Yes, thankfully, like super smart people on our team. I'm not the technical person, but I can explain it. And I'll give you a kind of a 1,000-foot view. So essentially, the way we are able to do this is leveraging like kind of two streams of technology or measurements, right? And so the one is our GPS. So all of our assets, whether it be a gig economy driver, whether it be a robot, or anything we're measuring, has like our geolocation, be a driver app or an API. From there, we create a visibility cone of, let's say, 20 feet. We then cross correlate that with consumers within the proximity based on how fast they're going, whether like the time of day,
based on where they are with their phone, the GPS.
Exactly. So like we don't.
Do they have to look it up at the time of like seeing it more or less, or like if they look it up 2 days later?
Well, so there's a few different things. Yeah. So since we'll follow that, we have the unique ID and we cross correlate that, and then if they Google it, then it shows up that person visited their website.
Okay.
So there's like a lot of like kind of like kind of one-off algorithms that are put there to kind of ensure that that's happening. Obviously, QR code is another way that we do it.
A little bit easier, probably. The other one is a little scary.
A little easier. But we've also added a lot of cool stuff too. This has allowed us to really scale and kind of get more of the ad budget. Is now adding more data partners to where we can literally digitally retarget consumers like all the way to like connected TVs at your house and stuff. So you can't hide.
So I'm on the street, a robot drives by me. I then go look it up. Then I get retargeted at home and wherever I go because I looked it up, or just get retargeted because I walked by it and now it knows that I've been in proximity.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you were their ideal client, then they would follow you, right? So we're not going to expose, it's GDPR compliance, it's CPI compliant. We're not showing personally identifiable information, and I believe this is actually advantageous for advertising, right? So like when Facebook first came out and the ads were terrible because they were like not relevant at all.
Right.
Not saying Facebook advertising is great.
It's going back the direction again because they've gotten rid of
anything. But it got to a point to where it actually was not a terrible experience because you're getting things that were like targeted and interesting to you.
Right.
And that's what we do. We collect the data to make it, make sense and make sure that our advertisers and partners are using that on the people who are going to, best react to it.
Right.
Really leverage it. And that's been that's the magic.
I mean, that is kind of magic because I never thought about attributing sales or attributing traffic to, something you see on the street. Is going to be a billboard. It's very hard to do.
Exactly.
And I don't think most people can do that. So the fact that you can do that technology is kind of crazy.
Yeah. That's too, what's interesting, right? Is like for billboards, as an example, like you don't see many empty billboards. So obviously they are working, but that's the biggest thing that was missing. And that's really where, when we were pivoting and saw the opportunity, was like, wow, there really is a lack of measurement in this space.
No measurement, unless you have a custom code.
Right, exactly. And so, if you're able to take that, measure it, then add the digital where, you know, you have all these other channels. We create a true omni-channel kind of campaign. We understand that people need to be exposed to, you know, some type of advertisement more than once or twice, right? And seeing it in the real world is a lot more brand building, right? There's a lot of data behind that, and we've been so oversaturated from, like, you know, even just growing up in the digital world, you know, Gen Y, Gen Z, there's a real affinity for like real world advertising.
Yeah, I barely buy from ads. I will occasionally, but
Yeah,
happens.
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, the ads, again, like, you know, people don't hate, like, there's this thing like, you hate advertising. It's like, no, you hate bad ads, right? So it's
Right.
like we try to also like educate our advertisers too. Don't take yourself so seriously. Like, put yourself in a position like where your end user, like, meet them where they're at, right?
It's that background too, is having the ad where you kind of don't really think it's an ad. It's just
Yeah,
That's kind of what Red Bull did. They just made it part of life.
exactly.
like
You see your Red Bull
Masterclass.
sign, but like you don't feel like you're being advertised. You're just seeing some branding.
so it's a
Exactly.
little different.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, there's good creative,
Yeah.
and then there is, let's say, not so good creative, and yeah, that's an important part of the cohesion and the effectiveness of a campaign for sure. So we handle that too. We got the in-house creative.
Do you?
Oh yeah,
We'll have to talk on that one.
yeah.
What's,
No, it's just, yeah, you can't, you know, we gotta keep our partners looking fresh. So
I would agree with that. That's why we have an in-house writing staff, because
there you go.
you get published and the writing's terrible. Doesn't help you much.
Not a good look.
Not a good look.
So, Scaling Secrets, what's driving growth?
For you guys, where are you kind of seeing that big trend? Is it
In the robots,
is it
Yeah.
I think you have scooters too.
Yeah, we've done some scooters in the past. Yeah, I mean, we've kind of dipped our toes in a lot of stuff. And you know, I'm a big fan of following the data, right? And that's what's kind of allowed us to have, you know, this year we'll have about 360% year over year growth.
Well,
And it's actually mainly been through our core product, which is the gig economy wraps.
Okay.
But I would say it's also been
are those
getting,
wraps on like cars and vehicles?
yeah, exactly. So we partner with we have a network of, you know, 50,000 Uber driver, Lyft drivers, rideshare drivers, yeah, Instacart drivers. They'll download their app and they're looking for supplemental income. So they're driving around with our GPS data, trying to get these campaigns.
Right.
Yeah.
You're targeting, how do you target them? Are you targeting them just by reaching out to Uber, or are you?
No, so we have our own network, and so at first it was a lot of like creative like, you know, being very scrappy with
Right.
it. But like once you are giving money out for essentially doing no real work, we've had a lot of publicity, and there's just like probably 100 blogs and people talking about ways to, like, you know, hacks to make money and stuff, because it really is a simplistic job. But what we do to ensure brand,
Sounds like PR is going to help a lot.
well, you know, I think we should talk. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe you can help.
Some organic growth.
Yeah, no, and so, and then we have done a little bit of paid acquisition, but the inventory has always been there. People are always looking for supplemental income.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want a couple extra $100? And it's enough to pay for their vehicle at times. So that growth has been natural. But we also had just partnered with the second largest rideshare provider in the world. We're launching a 1,000 vehicle campaign in Miami. So now we're doing it at like more of a business to business level. And yeah, it's kind of just been like a natural organic growth, right? You can't go out and you're not going to land like a Fortune 500 company without, first of all, landing those smaller ones, building that credibility, showing like, hey, we can satisfy this customer, we can deliver on what we say we do. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, because
No, I think you did.
kind of
So,
kind of just went off on a tangent.
no, that's perfectly fine. Let's talk about it. There's iterations
To this business, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs get scared of failure.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've had some failure in your past and some changes. Can we talk through, at least the most recent one was the rideshare, I think is what you were talking about?
Yeah, so we raised like $1 million for a business called the Nickel Ride, and you know, in a lot of ways, we had very like signs that we definitely had adoption, right? And so it was a ride share within like a 3-mile radius of these downtown cities, and St. Petersburg was actually one of them, but they were all in Southwest Florida. Probably had 50 different advertisers, and they were local advertisers. And we would pick people up, had a mobile app, drop them off. Drivers essentially worked for tips, and then we converted them to employees, but also got tips. That was kind of the main, you know, service industry. And so they'd be educating the public on, like, you know, different spots and recommending places to go. And it was working, and that's what was tough. was, we had cities like asking us to come, and we would pre-sell out some inventory, but it also got very expensive to move humans around, 7 days a week,
Gas,
vehicles breaking down,
maintenance, drivers.
drivers not showing up for shifts. And and so we basically got to a point to where we developed this platform, Nickelytics, that could do the measurement, and we realized that's where the value was. But also that's where the longevity of the business was. So it was really tough. We had to make a decision. Probably had a month of burn left, which was a place you do not want to be in.
I've been there.
And we were, talking to investors. And the thing with investors is they can be giving a lot of buying signals, right? And I think as a first-time founder, you overly trust that process, right? Yeah. I think it's I don't know. I'm going to give them a benefit of the doubt and say they aren't doing it to try to lead you on, but they're just, they're kind of waiting to see how it plays out on their end. And there's not much vested interest for them to say no if they are interested and maybe a strong lead investor comes on. So we were having these conversations where things were moving very fast and the business was growing, but we also were having more and more like burn on the business. And I remember one day, basically it was getting the, kind of core team members together and said, hey, this is what's happening. It was July 4th when we had the conversation at a holiday, and we're going to kind of reduce our pay to $500 a week. We're closing the business down, but we're actually pivoting. We're going to keep the investors intact. And so, yeah, it was like the media loved it, right? Because we give free rides, and so they would show up, come talk to us, and, they were always kind of singing praise. And gets to your head a bit. And then that same time when we made that announcement that we're shuttering the rideshare to focus on the Nickelytics,
right?
We had that same interviewer that, loved to talk about us, just came and asked, and, really was like, that was the headline, right? So that shuts down. There was one that said we pivoted, and I was like, I'm like, yes, you got the narrative right. But it was a failure, right? I mean, my investors that had invested in a business model, but I had to basically, take initiative, right? Because, you
have to or it dies.
That's it. And, the idea was, you've invested in this business, you have to trust my judgment. And then the end of the day, like, you being mad at me today is not what I'm responsible for. Ultimately it's the outcome of what the business results is. So thankfully we were able to, go through that really tough time, right? Where we really got back to, startup, where we literally moved almost the whole team into like a house and sharing a office that was part of the house, and working around the clock. Everyone was kind of, pulling two jobs, and we were able to survive that. And I think what was crazy was like we were, really defeated, and there was, obviously a lot of negative things, but there were signals that we were heading in the right direction on the rebuild. And then we got into Techstars, and that was a huge vote of confidence that, okay, great, there is value in that. It's like, it was like a moral victory more than anything. And so from there, that kind of restilled that confidence of like, okay, there's ups and there's downs, and there's ups and there's downs. And
did you have like a mentor through that? Because those are some big decisions. I know I've read The Hard Things About Hard Things, and it sounds like a lot of that decision making would be helped through that book. I'm not sure if you read that, but was there something that helped you through the process?
Yeah, definitely. So I had a mentor that actually had vested interest in the business, but I think was one of the more experienced investors, well, they were. And so, they kind of understood the risk of startups.
Right.
And I kind of made the mistake where took money from people who maybe weren't as experienced. And so there was a lot of like, a lot of emotion when that happened. And that was another thing too, is like who you take money from is really important, because it's, they say it's a marriage, right? And
right.
That's important, right?
Were these banks, VCs?
Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail.
That's fine. Not a problem.
Yeah, no. Yeah, just because, but, and so there was just, like that. But again, it's tough because you have to look at the data, you have to look at the trends, and you have to look beyond just the short term, and you have to see, okay, well, how am I going to build a sustainable business? At least that's what I felt. And it was a pivot, it was a bet, and it was a risk. But there, either way, it was a risk, right?
Right.
Maybe we got the wire the last day before we ran out of cash.
I mean, any major business is going to tell you the same story.
Yeah, exactly. So we thankfully did what the data was saying, and we were able to build it back up from the ashes. And
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I've pivoted so many times. I'm an engineer. I run a PR firm now.
yeah,
I sold meal prep containers at one point.
There you
Lawn
go.
darts. Like,
love it.
you got to try, learn, experiment. That's the only way you're going to figure it out. And it sounds like that technology kind of started with the original business. And so you pivoted on it, but you were still using the core of what you built.
Yeah, and that's why it's called Nickelytics.
Right.
Like, it's not because we were like, everyone asked, like, oh, where's that name from? It was literally, we were just so lazy. It was what we
That's what the software is
internally,
called.
yeah, the software, like, it was just the software. And we're like, what do we call the business? We're like, Nickelytics. And we just stuck with it. And we're like, should we rebrand? Nah, it's fine. McDonald's, who it's McDonald's. But it just, you say it enough, people will get used to it. So, yeah, you're spot on. You gotta be willing to go where the market lies, not where necessarily you want to be.
So if you had to start over, where would you start?
Oh, I would probably have not left my corporate job. No, I'm teasing.
I don't believe you.
No, I'm teasing.
I feel that way sometimes, though.
Yeah, it's like, it was like 5 years before I had health benefits. I'm like, oh, this is nice, health benefits.
Literally about the same.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's obviously hindsight. It's Monday morning quarterback. There's so much that you would change, right? But at the same time, all of those very challenging and very just emotionally like distressing times really hardened and thickened your skin to where you do get a little bit better under pressure.
Yeah.
And so it's, obviously, yeah, there's a lot of ways where we could have got to our revenue number now quicker, but you also got to realize that we get sold as entrepreneurs this idea that it's going to be, you're going to go to YC, you're going to get a $10 million investment, you're going to go public in 4 years or 5 years, and you're going to be Uber, Airbnb. And the reality is that's just not what happens, right? Even the overnight success, there's like 10 years behind it, right? That is
Yep.
miserable. And so, yeah, no, I mean, it's all like battle scars, like a lot of good memories, a lot of terrible memories, a lot of like anxieties, a lot of burnout, a lot of time questioning what the heck am I doing, imposter syndrome. But at the end of the day, you kind of start talking to other founders and you realize like, oh, this is normal. Like, shit, like this is like,
Every time we spin off a new department and we have new hires, they're all like,
Well, that's not perfect. You don't have all the training. I'm like, the program was developed yesterday.
yeah,
and I think that's the big thing about it, especially people that aren't entrepreneurs and aren't business owners. There's a big piece of risk in there. And
Totally.
a lot of people call us gamblers, but you have to make a risk and you have to do things before they're fully hatched, or you're just, someone else is going to do it, or it's just never going to get done.
yeah, absolutely. And, ideas aren't the hard part because, I've had many people tell me, oh, I had that idea. And,
Right.
But
Did you do it?
right. And again, it's, I had the idea for Instacart. Like, I did. And I'm like, oh man, I had that idea, but I never did anything with
Right.
it. So that's not, I didn't take the risk, but at the same time, like you were saying, it's not going to be perfect. I think that's another misconception that like, you're going to launch your business and people are going to care. It's like,
They don't.
they don't care. You're going to launch your business and it's going to be actually, it's better to launch your business and get no attention at first. Sorry for PR. I know maybe you don't want to hear that, but
No, I
sometimes
agree.
it's okay to build in quiet and just put it out there and start getting real feedback. And I always say this to the team, and this is a model I live by. Version 1 is better than version none.
Right.
And I've seen so many of my friends and colleagues talk about stuff that they want to do for so long. And, I think a lot of people actually could be entrepreneurs that, are, if they were just willing to take that risk, because a lot of it is, skills that you've developed over the years. Obviously, you're going to face things that you might not have faced in your previous roles, but people are, pretty like resilient, and that's why the human race has continued to evolve, right? Is through risk taking. So
Yeah.
it's risky to also not start your own company at times, because we've seen what do they call it, the Great Recession or the Great.
I mean, that's why I did. There was a recession in energy, and I was in the energy field. So like I didn't get fired, but my benefits
Yeah.
got cut.
Yeah.
I saw executives get parachutes, but they're getting cut and let go.
Yeah.
People that were getting early retired,
Yeah,
and I just felt like the way it looked, it didn't seem as safe as everyone promised.
exactly.
And I was like, I would much rather. The biggest skill for me is I know how to make money. Like
Yep.
that's a skill in itself. Like sales, marketing.
Absolutely.
Like I can go there and make money. I think that I'll never go hungry because of that. I think that's a skill that everyone should learn.
Absolutely. And I also would say with that too, um, if the market's really bad and that's your one skill set, you're in a tough spot, because you're not going to get picked up somewhere else. That's not because you're not competent. But if you know how to make money, if you know how to be kind of like self-motivated enough, and the biggest thing is consistency, right?
Absolutely.
Like I would,
It's boring because you have to do the same thing over and over again,
It's-
and then you're doing these small little adjustments.
as tiniest adjustments over a 5-year span is what is going to make or break the business. And yeah, I mean, that's what it was, is it's just showing up. It's doing the stuff. I never have been the smartest person, like in any circumstance, but I've had a hard work ethic. And, I think like I've just understood, like, I'm not going to give up. And, there's some hard skills and you pick up soft skills along the way. But yeah, it's I can imagine, working corporate. Like I just think about that. Like I'll hear my wife on like a corporate, because she works corporate, and like there'll be like a conversation happening. I'm like, this is the most pointless conversation I have ever heard.
This is a question when obviously you're still acting CEO, but
You have investors, you have a board that you probably have to respond to, you have people that theoretically could fire you.
Totally.
what was that transition like? And don't throw them under the bus, because
Yeah, of
hopefully they
course.
do listen and they care. But, what messages do you have for people that are looking at doing that process? Because to me, even like we've had marketing agencies offered to like buy us, merge us, Edelman's a huge firm, things like that. But I don't want to report to someone, and then like my pay is set by what they like.
Absolutely.
Too many things there for me.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a huge thing. And I think it's a real thing. And it's something that you as an entrepreneur need to be like very aware of, right? And I think it's like taboo to talk about, which is strange. Like, exiting the business, like,
Right.
do you think about exiting the business?
I'm always looking at different strategies,
Sure.
especially when it comes to capital raises. I
course.
think that's the thing too, is a lot of people, like, you're still CEO, you're still running the business, so you didn't really exit. You took a liquidity event as well,
Yep.
more the way I look at it. And then you
Exactly.
took capital to help grow the business.
Yep.
But
And now we're fundraising again.
Right.
So it's
to do that, you brought in basically bosses to do that. So
Yeah.
that's the part that, what's that transition like?
Yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, I got really fortunate. I really did. I mean, the guys that I work with, literally some of the like sharpest, most competent and achieved business entrepreneurs, people who've, scaled their business to 200 million in revenue and sold it to publicly traded companies. And, my direct boss, was VP of acquisitions at the largest commercial real estate firm, doing over $5 billion a year in acquisitions, and ran divisions at AT&T. And so, like, to really be in the company of that, and to be empowered to also have a seat at the table, I see as such value beyond just growing out of myself. I'm always like, we got to stack the deck. Like, how do we make this successful as possible? And yeah, I mean, I've definitely heard horror stories, but I think that's where we really focused on, building a relationship,
Right.
making sure that the morals were kind of aligned in terms of how we do business, how we look at business. Obviously, your business objectives need to align as well. Like, do you want to run a lifestyle business? Do you want to turn this into, a venture-backed business? And so I've been very, very fortunate to where their model was, companies that are working, we don't want to disrupt them. We just want to come in and empower them. And they've truly stuck to their word. and they made my life a lot easier. Yeah, of course I have, a report that I need to send to tonight.
Are they acting as like mentors? Are you getting guidance as well? Because money's one thing. Like money's great. I can invest it. I can use it. But the guidance is to me a big piece of it. Is if I did do that.
Yeah. So their model was very interesting. Shout out T72. They acquire businesses that kind of have this like $1 million like revenue. So obviously post market fit, profitable, but maybe not amazingly profitable. And then like just a lot of these kind of like signals, right? So they look at a lot of businesses, and then obviously they look at founders that they want to back, right? Because that's a big thing when you're investing. Is you don't look at the business, you look at the jockey, right?
Yeah.
And that's with all the pivots. That's why you're still standing, right? It's not because the pivots were the best ideas. It's because you continue to pivot and you persevered. So kudos to you. And so, yes, a lot of guidance. And the beautiful thing was there was actually a point where I finished the transaction and I was so burnt out that I told him, I said, I need 2 weeks off. Like, I just need to go like disappear and kind of get my head straight and like kind of, come back. And they stepped in and they, very like generously kind of kept things moving, respected the culture that we had in place, empowered the team to make decisions, and then came back. And it's like every time I'm with them, I tell them it's like I'm getting an MBA because it's
Absolutely.
operating on a different level of which, is super exciting. And so I think that's, a big value to me is getting to just work with them on a day-to-day basis very closely. And, kind of just pick up from them things. And it's very exciting.
Awesome. What advice do you have for people? Just
Yeah.
growing, scaling, advertising. What are your golden nuggets? What are something that you wish someone had told you?
Yeah, I would say, I think this is getting talked about more, but entrepreneurship is not sexy. It really is a tough thing, and it's very lonely. And so I think knowing that and kind of expecting that, but also then just being willing to take the risk, because the best things in life are typically on the other side of, taking risk and being scared. So it's almost counterintuitive. And if something is, eating at you and something that's like keeping you up at night and you think it's it, like, that's why we have the things that we have today is from entrepreneurs. And I think, we need to continue to empower them, and we need to continue to, like educate them. And so I'm always excited when I get a chance to give any type of mentorship or feedback, because that was so critical to my growth. And, and just having the support team in place when I needed, some feedback and just guidance. Cause, it can be lonely. So yeah, I guess that would be my parting thoughts.
I love it. I do think people are talking about that more and more.
Yeah.
But awesome. It was great having you on the show. How do people reach out to you? How do people get involved with your company?
Yeah. So pretty, easy to find. Just Google Nickelytics. We should pop up. So my name's Judah Longgrear. You can add me on LinkedIn. That's pretty much the only social that I'm on. So, I guess I'm officially not cool, and that's the only social media that I'm on these days.
That's okay.
But yeah, you can just reach out to our website and we'll get connected, and love to hear from you.
Awesome. It was great having you on the show.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.